Are you having a good time? Are you having a good time? Are you learning a lot? Are you going to use and apply some of these things? I sure hope so. All right, have a seat. Yeah, thank you so much for your support on the book too. It's so funny. It's such a natural thing for me to say when people say, "Oh, Harv, you did so killer on the book." And first of all, I don't go, "Did?" Hello, this is an alive situation in progress. And secondly, they all want to know. Whenever I'm asked, "How did you do that?" I always say, "Well, if you had the team that I did, it's pretty easy." Good or good? And who's the team? You are. Thank you. So thank you so much for that. And by the way, if you have books already, give them out or if you haven't got any more books, get more and give them out. I'm in utter shock, literal shock, at every night when I'm on stage somewhere and I'm autographing books, when people come up to me and tell me what's happened for them, even before they've even gone to the 3-day Millionaire Mind Intensive, just from the book. I'm blown away myself. And, you know, I go, just from reading that? Well, yeah, reading it, and I just never thought of it that way, and I did a couple of the practices, and this, and I go, yeah, oh, it's unbelievable. So make sure you do your mission. A little part of that is helping other people. Yes or yes? And introducing them to the book and let them read for themselves. I mean, if you can pick up just one piece in there, it can make a massive difference. Have you experienced that? Yeah. Yes or yes? Okay, thank you. All right. One of the things, my favorite things to do at some of our millionaire schools is to really for you to get a chance to recognize how rich people think. And, you know, I'm all about that. I'm all about the inner game of money and success. And very often, most rich people don't get interviewed on that portion. They get interviewed on what's their current situation as far as, you know, their project and this and that, but they never get interviewed on what's really gone on for them and how they thought in such a way that created such success. Does that make sense to you? And the first step to action, what's the source of all action? Your thoughts. Your what? Your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. That's your blueprint. That leads to your what? Results. Thank you. All right, so I want to bring some gentlemen on here, and I just noticed that they're all gentlemen. I apologize. Hey, I have to say something. When and if we always attempt to get females, but I'll tell you what right now, we're not going to get a female because she's female. Get it? Not going to get a female because she's female. Always looking, always attempting, but if there's a choice, we're going to take the best person that at least we know. So if you have amazing women who you believe can fit on our stage, we are completely open to that. Because you know what? The truth is they're far and few between. Just the way it is. So I'm hoping that someday it's you gals that become the ones that are up here. Yes? All right. Okay, especially when it comes to investments and money. Just the way it is. You know, and other things, you know, it's the other way around, isn't it? Right. All right. So we're going to do a little panel up here. We call this the millionaire panel or the multimillionaire panel. And let's get our guys up here. They don't know that they're contestants, but let's get no, I'm kidding. Yeah, come on up here, guys. So have a seat. We're going to share. So I'm going to thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And if you want, you can applaud for those guys too. No, it's okay. It's all right. It's all right. So we don't have to applaud again here. Just want to introduce them again. We got Rick Rule. We got Greg Hasbrett. We've got Keith Cunningham. Here's a gentleman that you haven't met yet. His name is Brent Todd, and you will. Scott Cousins, and of course, Sandy Botkin. Good or good? Right. And by the way, it's not like, you know, we said, it's kind of like we pick these people based on the one criteria is A, that they're training you, but B, is that they've got to be rich. And because there's a lot of people who do training that aren't rich. True. Okay, but these guys are, or they wouldn't be up here. All right. So guys, this is a little bit less formal than you might be used to, so you can take your jackets, shirts off, and things like that. It's all right. Anyways, we're gonna when it gets to you, Brent, then you give a little bit of an extra 30 seconds just to let them know who you are, because Brent will be talking to you tomorrow night a little bit, later in the day. All right, so I've got a bit of a fan back here that's just blowing my head off. That's all right. You know, guys, a lot of you don't know this, but we deal, our primary foundation of what we do is the inner game of money. And that's where we start with everybody, and that is your money blueprint, how you were conditioned and programmed around money and success primarily. And a lot of that has to do with your past, especially when you were young. It has to do with what you heard about money and wealth. It has to do with what you modeled from your parents around money and wealth and management and things like that. And your family situation as you were growing up, or any specific incidents. So I'm going to ask each of you to, and we're going to time it because we don't want to be going over here. So I'm going to keep you down to 2 minutes apiece. And the question is, tell us where you lived and what was your family situation around money when you were growing up. In other words, what you hear around money and what you model around money, and how might have this affected your drive to succeed? All right? So we'll share microphones, and we'll start with Rick over here, and hopefully you understand the question. If you don't, then just do your best.
No, I understand the question personally. I was raised by a single mother, school teacher, no father. In terms of money, we didn't have any. I came from a family on both sides that was fairly well-to-do, so I had the advantage of knowing that money was obtainable. We just didn't have any. Thrift was important, because it is if you don't have any. And coming from a family that had some, but when you're part of the family that doesn't have any, it gives you maybe more incentive to succeed. So I think the upbringing, particularly being brought up by a highly intelligent single mother, there was a lot of motivation early on and an awful lot of support and education.
Excellent. Good, good, good. Well, we'll hold off on the end. We'll get the clapping at the end of each one. Great. That's super. So also, I want you guys to make notes on the key phrases or key words or key lessons you can get out of each answer. All right? That's your job. What's your job? To make what? Mates, on the what? The key lessons. The key what? Lessons that you can get out of each answer. And we're going to take them up after. Go ahead.
I'm Greg Habstrid, which most of you hopefully know by now. I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, and my memories of being young and learning about money, I was raised in a middle-class family in Calgary. My dad was an accountant and was with the city of Calgary for 30-some years. And so I grew up with the concept that it's a really good strategy to go to school, get good grades, get a good job, retire with a pension. Because it worked for him, so it'll work for me. And fairly young, I recognized that probably wasn't going to be the path that I would take, because I can remember a lot of the phrases of money doesn't grow on trees and we can't afford that, and a lot of the traditional things that people are born or grow up with. And I can remember specifically some of the pain associated in junior high. It would have been, you know, when I was 12, 13, 14, and peer pressure starts to build. And I went to school at a school that was close to a lot of really wealthy areas, and all the kids are not all, the perception then is all the kids do, but not all the kids have the labels, the expensive clothes. And I can remember the pain associated with that, not being able to go to school with that kind of stuff. My parents probably could have afforded it, but they just chose not to. And in hindsight, it's been interesting, because I've taken a very different approach with mine. So I think my perspective from the Money Blueprint is I'm one of those ones that kind of went the opposite to some degree. But the thing that I did learn from them was integrity. That was ingrained in me, and that's what probably the most powerful thing I remember from childhood. Excellent. Thank you. Next.
Hello. Oh, good. I'm Keith Cunningham. I grew up in Houston, Texas. At a very, very early age, I remember my parents talking about how difficult it was to afford certain things. We had a very middle-class family. My dad worked for AT&T, retired from AT&T after 30-something years. very similar situation to Greg's family. My parents would continually talk about ruining the day that they didn't make an investment. You know, they'd say, oh gosh, I remember we could have bought that at such and such a time, and look how much money we could have made if we only would have done that. I started a business when I was 11 years old. I delivered eggs to our neighbors. And my dad, and I've actually made a lot of money for an 11 or 12-year-old kid, and my dad gave me, when I was 12 years old, he gave me a book, and it was a ledger that showed, on the inside it showed here's how much money came in and here's where the money went. And on the outside, there was a picture of a three-masted ship, an 18th century schooner, three-masted ship. And the ship was listing. It looked like it was about to sink. And underneath the picture was a caption. And the caption said, "Small leaks sink a great ship, Benjamin Franklin." And that has stuck with me over the years. In fact, I'm just finishing a book, and that is going to be in the book, this story about this three-masted ship. And so I learned at a very early age, look, I mean, you got to pay attention to the little things. The little things are the things that'll sink the boat, and so that was one of the primary messages I got is a blueprint.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, Brent.
Yeah, hi, I'm Brent Todd. You haven't had a chance to get to know me yet. I'm a broker out of Vancouver, Canada, and I manage a good chunk of the money for both WBIC and FIC. So we'll be talking about the strategies that we use for those clubs tomorrow. So I hope you're all in attendance tomorrow. I grew up in I'll say a middle-class background, but it was a struggle. My dad really worked for the government all his life. He was a colonel in the Army. He came out of that, so he got a government job, and it wasn't a great salary, but my dad was a very good at managing the money, so he was able to get us into maybe a neighborhood that we wouldn't have got into otherwise based on that salary. But in listening to Greg talk about peer pressure, I know what he's talking about, because I was in an area that other people had money, and they did have the nice clothes and the nice bikes and the cars, and my family obviously couldn't afford that. We had 5 kids. I was one of 5 kids. My dad's working for a government salary. So I learned very early that if I wanted anything in life, I was going to have to work for it myself. So, I mean, I had my, paper route at grade 5, and from there I had a full-time job in the summer when I was in grade 9, and I was working up north on the drill rigs that basically put myself through college. So, I mean, that background really shaped my life, because I learned very early on that if I wanted something, I was going to have to do it myself.
Great, next.
Scott Cousins. I was born in Montreal and actually ended up moving about 12 times during my growing up years. And my father was an executive. We were an upper middle class family. He was an executive with Chrysler Canada in Canada. And it was in junior high, I guess I was in grade 7, when he left this position where he'd been at for 20 years. I'll never forget sitting at the kitchen table, and he looked at my sister and I and my mother and said, well, for the first time in his life, your father is unemployed. And he left the company for certain reasons, and within moments was picked up, and the next portion of his life began. But my father was never, he was always willing to take a risk. He's an entrepreneur by nature, although he had a long-term senior executive job. One of the things he instilled in me at a very young age was, to eat, you must work. And I had my first paper route when I was in grade 5, and have worked ever since. Had a great childhood, but there was a work component to it that, my boys, it's a slightly different world than it used to be, and it's harder for young kids to get work. But I think instilling the work ethic and a willingness to take risk was something that stuck with me. And also, two other quick things. One is 10% of everything I ever earned, starting from day one, was set aside for somebody other than me. And I think that's, you know, for my life at least, that's been something that's been important. And so that song this morning of you have to give before you get, or something along that lines, I think it's a powerful, it's a powerful truism.
Excellent, thank you.
Hi all, I'm Sandy Botkin. I guess I grew up in Baldwin, New York. My dad was a principal, my mom was a school teacher, so education always was emphasized in our household. But the thing that made real changes in my life, there's a couple things I think if you think to everyone's life, you know, what's like a paradigm shift, what really affects us. And one of the things that really affected me was my mom had a lot of junk in the house, and I guess I've learned that the amount of junk always rises to the level of your house. No matter how big a house it is, they load it with junk. Well, my mom put an ad in the paper, and I to this day, I never realized how brilliant that ad was, and I learned a lot about ad copy from her, but the ad said, "House full of strange old things." We had every crazy person coming to that house. We must have had 500 people in our house. My grandmother was afraid she'd be sold. Well, my parents looked at each other and said, "Holy cow, there's something going on here." And they decided to sell antiques. And they became the largest antique dealers in North America. Well, I asked my parents, what is it that made you so successful? And because, you know, I became very entrepreneurial. I saw their lifestyle and I said, heck, I don't want a job, I want this. And I did all kinds of things like selling newspapers as kids, or delivering newspapers and selling sodas at the local yacht club and doing all kinds of stuff. And my father said to me, "You want to become successful, Sandy? I'm going to give you a real secret of why our business stands out over anybody else's." And his answer was, no matter what we do in our antique business, we always try to have what we call constant and never-ending improvement. You either improve or you die. It's that simple. If you have to start a business, always try and make it better. And to this day, when I do seminar business, you don't realize when I deliver my programs, but my program is a result of 20 years of evolution. I would call up students when I get evaluations, and I wouldn't call up the ones who liked me. I called up the ones who didn't like me. And I would ask them, what didn't you like? What did you fear? What could I do better? And as a result of 20 years of evolution, that's how I made my business the way it is. So I would say that's certainly one of the major things that affected me.
Excellent. Hey, give him a round of applause. Thank you. Great. Thanks, guys. So are you writing down lessons? As I've got about 7 or 8 right there, so hopefully you've got that, because these are important things. Like, let me ask you a question. If you could take a really rich person to lunch, would you? Yes. Well, you've got 7 with you right now, so or 6 at this point in time, and literally, what comes out of their mouth should be going not only into your brain but locked in there. Yes or yes? Yes. All right. Let's ask another question here, and that is, some of you alluded to it a little bit, but what do you believe is the number one reason for your success, and why do you believe that? And it could also include personal characteristics or traits, whatever you feel is, but just keep it to one thing. We'll give you 1 minute. So the number one reason, if you could boil it right down, there's several we know, but the one most important reason that's most important for your success as to why you become successful. And we'll start right over here. Yeah, we'll start with Greg this time.
One single thing, okay. I think for me personally, the ability to see opportunities in things that aren't readily obvious is probably what I would have to say. Most of the businesses and the growth and the success that I've had has been the result of trying to do something a little bit differently, or seeing how something was being done and thinking, you know, I think there's a way you can improve that. And I've also done that within my businesses. I started out as 10 or 12 years ago, the company that I sold a few years ago, it started as a software development company and ended up an audio video production firm going into the web. And I'm not sure how we made that transfer, but along the way, it was recognizing opportunities, doors opening, and at the same time, the constant struggle of avoiding the entrepreneur dilemma.